Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hello, everybody.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer tips, insights, ideas, and examples for how small, emerging, and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods, brands can build their business. Everything from determining if you're ready to grow, where to start, how to prove it online, how to go about securing distribution at a national retailer, driving your business with the end consumer, and how to go about finding an investor if that's important to you. The bottom line is, we would love to help you be successful by highlighting the many important factors that go into establishing and growing your brand.
Bruce and I have been working in CPG commercial operations for over 30 years, working on brands of all sizes. By commercial operations, we mean sales, marketing, trade marketing, new product development, broker and distributor management, new product development, brand M&A, and financing. As a part of our show, we bring our guests that are brand founders and leaders, agencies, Amazon specialists, sales agents, contract manufacturers, retailers, and investors to discuss their experiences and share their insights with the audience.
To keep up with the show, please subscribe to the Road to Retail podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Leave us a review and consider sharing the show with a friend or colleague that may benefit from the content. You can also check out our website to learn more at www.road2retail.com and follow The Road to Retail on LinkedIn. We would love to have you along for the ride. Today's show is sponsored by Retail and Response. You've heard it a million times on this podcast. It's not about getting your product on the retail shelf. It's about moving product off the shelf and hitting the retailer's sales velocity hurdles fast. Otherwise, they're going to begin the discontinuation process. Trust me. A slow sales start can be fatal to your brand. You need consumers coming in seeking your brand. You know, the one they heard about on radio or saw on TV. If you think radio or TV advertising is too expensive, you need to speak with our friends at Retail and Response. With over 30 years helping drive hundreds of millions of dollars of sales for their clients, Retail and Response can get your brand on radio and TV for pennies on the dollar. Check them out at retailandresponse.com. That's retailandresponse.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the most recent episode of Road to Retail, where we interview colleagues and friends in the CPG industry. Welcome, Bruce. Great to see you again.
Tracy, how are you, my friend? Another great day to be on the road to retail.
Absolutely, and we have an illustrious guest today, so why don't you tell our audience about our friend Brooks?
All right, well, we're very fortunate today to be joined by Brooks Powell, who is the founder and CEO of Cheers Health, which he will tell you about in a moment. But Brooks, welcome to the show, and thanks for your time this morning, my friend.
Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor. I've been watching and listening to the show for the past year, and so you've had a lot of amazing guests. I'm glad I tricked you into letting me be one.
Oh, well, no, the honor is ours, but thank you. So Brooks, as we jump in here this morning, why don't you give people a little bit of your personal backstory and how you ended up founding Cheers, and then we'll jump into some deeper topics as we go. But the ball is yours.
So I have probably one of the most interesting stories when it comes to starting a business. I became a Baptist when I was in high school, and I was a phenomenal swimmer. I won the state championship my sophomore, junior, and senior year. Had the state record, and my senior year I was the 8th fastest high school swimmer in the nation.
Wow.
I knew I wasn't good enough to be in the Olympics, though. So I wanted to go to a university that I couldn't get in without the swimming. So I thankfully was recruited to Princeton, ended up swimming for Princeton, and I was a religion major, primarily studying Christian ethics. And the plan was for me to go on and become a Baptist minister after school. So if you know anything about Cheers, then you know we sell alcohol supplements that are designed to support your liver and make you feel better the next day after drinking alcohol. Some people would say it's a hangover cure, but we don't like that word. We say no, this is for responsible drinking, and even responsible drinking can make you feel less than 100% the next day. So there's always this big question, though. How the heck does someone go from Baptist minister to hangover tycoon?
That's my question.
And the reason was that I actually took a class outside of my major, which was a neuroscience course. And the midterm project was to write a 12-page paper on a drug of your choice and explain, using neuroscience terms, how it gets you high, how it gets you addicted, how it changes the brain, what neurotransmitters it affects, how it affects receptors, on and on and on. And it was essentially the professor's way of having a fun midterm project that proves that you've actually been paying attention in class. And that year was 2013. And that put me on Google Scholar searching terms like alcohol neuroscience, right as an article was being published in the Journal of Neuroscience titled Dihydromycin as a Novel Anti-Intoxication Medication, which is a mouthful.
I think I read that too. I have a couple of leather-bound copies.
And basically what they showed is that there is this flavonoid called dihydromycin, or DHM for short, and it came from this plant that you would typically find in Asia. In Asia, they have a very robust hangover cure or hangover prevention or liver supplement market. In fact, generally what you'll find is that their hangover prevention supplements is about 2% of their annual alcohol sales. Whereas here in the United States, it's like 0.0001%, right? So in Asian countries, they're using these products all the time. And a lot of famous celebrities back them and all of that. Well, anyways, this team at UCLA was like, you know what? Let's try to figure out how these products actually work. So they had a hunch that it was this dihydromycin flavonoid within this plant, and they basically injected this flavonoid into rats, and they found they could instantly sober them up. If you left a rat that was genetically predisposed to become alcoholic within a room of food, water, and alcohol, the control group would drink 4 or 5 times as much alcohol within basically 3 or 4 weeks before they literally hit the cap, like they could not physically consume anymore. But if you put DHM into their alcohol, they would still continue to drink alcohol, but they wouldn't increase their alcohol consumption patterns over time. So they basically were like responsible drinkers. And then if you took the rats that were full-blown alcoholic, gave them DHM in their alcohol, they would come back down to baseline levels of alcohol consumption within about 2 weeks. And then finally, they also showed that rats given DHM showed no signs of hangovers. And this is always funny. They go, okay, well, how do you know if a rat's hungover or not? And they did 3 tests. The first test is a hungover rat will typically have its hands out really, really wide and kind of droop its head. So you can act, whereas a rat that feels good has its paws in very close. So you can actually measure the distance of their paws, and you can get a pretty good proxy of how well they feel. You can then put them in a maze, and then obviously a non-hungover rat performs way better than a hungover rat at a simple maze test. And then finally, I don't know if you've ever, drank a little bit too much, but you'll notice that you don't sleep well. And then the next day, like if you had too much, lights are too bright and sounds are too loud and everything's just like too intense. Well, it turns out because alcohol is a depressant, when it leaves your bloodstream, you have the opposite effects. And you're actually more likely to have seizures. And so what they'll do is they'll do seizure threshold testing on the rats. And then that's probably the most objective way, where they basically flash lights with varying intensities. And that's probably the best way you can tell how much alcohol withdrawal, or GABA rebound as we call it, a rat is undergoing. So anyways, I wrote my paper on this, gave it to my professor. He actually scrapped his planned class lecture, lectured on this instead. After the class, he said, hey, are you thinking about turning this into a business? Because if so, I would like to be an advisor. And that was kind of a really big moment for me. So then prayed about it, all of that. But within basically about a month, I had totally altered my career trajectory, because what was so fascinating about this is that this looked like the most promising alcohol use disorder drug, this ingredient, and I'm using drug in the neuroscience sense, not the Food and Drug Administration sense. this looked like the most promising alcohol use disorder therapeutic candidate in the last like 40 or 50 years. And what's fascinating about it is it doesn't ruin the pleasure of alcohol and it doesn't make the hangover worse, which is what the typical solutions are. And then what we figured out is over the next 2 years of figuring out supply chain, all of that, we realized it could actually be lawfully sold in the United States as a dietary supplement. So I raised $200,000 from an angel investor in the Princeton community, graduated in 2017. Me and my wife went on it full time with one friend from high school. Primarily, we're doing Facebook and Instagram ads to our website and Amazon. We got the business up to, we did $500,000 that first year, 2017, but that was a half year. We were probably run rating about $2 million a year on e-com. And then Q1 2018, we probably got the run rate up to about 3 or 4 million. And then we aired on Shark Tank. And we were not only on Shark Tank, we were literally the last company to pitch on the season finale. I came out on Shark Tank wearing my cap and gown. And that kind of like shot us out of a cannon. And so I think we would have been just as successful as we are today without Shark Tank, but that really sort of sped things up. That got us to about 7 million. Over the next year, we got to about 10 million. Then we kind of got stuck at about 10 million because of some changes with iOS 14.5. And then we started pursuing brick and mortar retail with National Association of Chain Drugstores Total Store Expo in 2022. That was our first trade show ever. Obviously, we had a lot of this e-com success. And one of the first merchants we met with was a Walmart merchant. And he goes, "Oh my gosh, this is an incremental basket building, clear and defined need state. You need it when you need it. So it drives trips and traffic." And we didn't know any of this retail lingo, but it was like our second meeting of the Total Store Expo. And then, they have the Meet the Market where you'll have like 20 meetings. And so we like took all the notes down and we just used that language for the rest of the day. And I would say about 1/3 of the retailers we met with were basically like, figure out how to make this product retail ready because we want this product in our stores. And so that kicked off a lot of these relationships, and we needed to figure out everything after that, how to make packaging that works for retail, how to figure out a pricing matrix, all of that type of stuff, how we were going to get it there. And now the business is doing really well. So we did 15 million last year with a little bit of profit. And this year we'll do somewhere between 20 and 25 million. Hopefully closer to 25 million. But I've also been in business long enough to know that sometimes you wildly miss your projections, and that can be for the better too. So
true.
So Brooks, couple of things. I think we've just covered all the topics Tracy and I were.
Oh, sorry.
That was great.
Hey, thanks, Brooks. Appreciate it.
One key question before we jump in. Do the swimming records still stand?
The school records and the state record stands for 5A. The 6A record's a lot faster now. The kids are getting so much faster than they used to. And the reason is they train different. Back in my day, they put us in a pool and made us swim a bunch of yards. And then halfway through the season, then we'd start sprinting. Now the kids, if you're a sprinter, you sprint and lift weights. And it's really all the records are just getting crushed because they're a lot smarter with the training.
We'll move on, but my youngest daughter was a distance swimmer for her Division 3 team. She did the mile. I mean, that was brutal, man. Oh. I had to shave like 3 times before that race was over. All right, Tracy, bring us into the discussion here today.
Well, Brooks, you did a great job of giving the answer to my first question, which was give us the background. But talk to our audience a little bit about. It sounds like you did a lot of scientific research, obviously before you launched the product, but did you do any kind of branding research or any positioning research before you, decided to launch? And the second part of that is, did you have any concerns about, promoting, irresponsible alcohol consumption?
So this is a key part of the story that in trying to shorten the story, I kind of gloss over it. There's a big question is a Baptist minister the best person to run this company or the worst person to run this company? Or should you have some party animal that runs this company? And I would make the argument that someone who wants to be a Baptist minister and has that sort of Christian religious tradition that grounds them is extremely important for it, because what we've generally found is that people who use our product report feeling like they've had about half as many drinks the next day when they wake up. So, Tracy, if you go and you're reading Warren Buffett and you have 3 strong IPAs, you'd feel like you'd have 1.5 strong IPAs, right?
Right.
I don't know what you do on a Friday night, but that's generally the gist. Is you'll feel like you've roughly had half as many drinks. Now, if people go out and they go, oh, wow, if I feel like I have half as many drinks, then I can just drink twice as much, then have you actually done any good in society? And so there's also 2 ways to think about branding. The first way is ask the customer what they want. The second way to brand is build the brand that you want, and hopefully some customers will also like it. And I am very much in the second camp. I selfishly believe that, and this is sort of coming back to the Christian religious tradition, that God gave alcohol and alcohol is good, and yet we know that it's bad for your health. And so those 2 things, somehow they're at odds with each other, but they're also not. And so I believe that alcohol serves a bona fide beneficial purpose within human society, but that we should be smart and responsible about how we use it.
Sure.
And I see that the way we're bringing our patented combination of dihydromycin and cysteine to market is, in and of itself, the product is good for humanity, but the way we market it is also critically important, because what we're trying to do is something that no one else will do. The health companies, if you say, hey, what's the healthiest way to drink alcohol? They'll say, well, don't drink alcohol. And the alcohol companies, if you say, what's the healthiest way to drink alcohol? They say, just drink responsibly.
Right.
No one's actually giving a picture for, hey, alcohol is not good for you. This obviously the smartest way to drink would be not drink alcohol at all, but half Americans do drink alcohol every month, and 1/4 of Americans drink more alcohol than they should, which is defined as 7 drinks a week for women and 14 plus drinks a week for men. So 1/4 of Americans drink more alcohol than they should. No one is teaching them smarter ways to do that, such as avoiding alcohol with sugar in it, because fructose is gram for gram as hard on your liver as alcohol, such as not drinking every single day. There's studies showing that drinking daily is its own independent risk factor. So if you're going to have 14 drinks, you'd be better off having 14 drinks over 5 days than you would like 7 days. No one's teaching the importance of exercise. And nobody's also teaching you shouldn't drink right before bed because it ruins your sleep. And so I think Cheers is uniquely positioned in that we have a product that only affects people who drink alcohol. And we are the only company that is willing to speak towards this subject, because the health companies just want to say, don't do it. The alcohol companies want to say, they just want to look a different direction, don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. And, we actually make it part of our brand that, hey, we want you to be a smarter, more health conscious, more responsible drinker. And we believe our product is a step in that direction.
Awesome. I love it. Love it. Bruce?
So Brooks, you touched on this a little bit. And when we spoke before you decided to come on the show with us, since you kind of defined your own category and you've told us how you fit in and the way you approach it, tell us a little bit about the unique ingredient and the adventure you guys had of getting it approved so that you weren't out of bounds with any of the authorities. That was fascinating.
Yeah. So the way this works is for a dietary supplement in the United States, you have essentially 3 routes for approval. So you have the Dietary Supplements Health and Education Act of 1994. And by the way, I'm not a lawyer by trade, so I'm doing my best to explain the lawyer stuff.
Yeah, no problem.
Pre-1994, if there was a product that was in the market and was safe in the market pre-1994 in the United States, it basically got grandfathered in. After 1994, you had to file something called a new dietary ingredient notification, which is basically you ask the FDA permission to sell the product. Well, there's actually a third route, which is called the International Food Supply Exemption route. And the International Food Supply Exemption route basically states that if there is a bona fide country with their equivalent of an FDA and they have an improved an ingredient, then you can use that ingredient so long as it's not been chemically altered. And so basically dihydromycetitin fits into that because it basically comes from a plant where this is an approved food ingredient in China, and we have not chemically altered it to get it into our product. Now, you cannot patent an organically occurring compound. You can't just sort of patent nature. You can't just find something and go, oh, it's ours. So what we did is we found that once we had the dihydromycetitin, the question was, okay, well, how do we get some sort of protection around this dietary supplement so that everyone, doesn't use it? And we then kicked off this big research project to figure out what would be the second and third most important ingredients necessary to support your liver and help you feel better the day after drinking alcohol. So the way that dihydromycetitin works is it's actually a twofer. And in fact, it probably has even more benefits than that. But when we think about something like an aspirin, right? Aspirin, what do we know it for? Pain, and it's an anticoagulant. So it's both an analgesic and it's an anticoagulant. So it has two benefits. One, it will thin your blood and make it less likely or make heart attack, stroke less severe, right? And then it's also good for pain. Well, dihydromycetitin has this effect where it binds to the same brain receptor that alcohol binds to. And by doing so, it actually buffers this rebound, which is probably the main reason you feel bad the day after drinking alcohol. And the reason we know that is because Bloody Marys and hair of the dog are a thing. If you just drink more alcohol the next day, you're getting exposed to more toxins and you're getting more dehydrated, and yet you immediately feel better. So that suggests, oh, wow, yeah, it's the rebound that has most of the effects. Well, the other thing is that alcohol itself is not actually that toxic. Alcohol in the human body converts into something called acetaldehyde. And acetaldehyde is 30 times more toxic than alcohol is itself. So you may want the alcohol because that's what makes you feel good, but you don't want the acetaldehyde because that's what's actually toxic. That's what's toxic to every human cell. And that's why one of the reasons that alcohol is so bad for you over the long haul. DHM will actually the way your body gets rid of this acetaldehyde is that you have an enzyme called ALDH. It will actually speed up ALDH. So it'll actually speed up the rate at which your body already uses to naturally get acetaldehyde converted into acetate, and then you pee it out. So that's the DHM. The cysteine nature's really clever. Nature's amazing. Cysteine is an amino acid, and in the presence of acetaldehyde, it will actually bind to acetaldehyde and form a non-toxic compound called MTCA, which is just a neutralized form of acetaldehyde. Then you pee it out. So we basically were able to get a patent on the combination of dihydromycetitin and cysteine, and we have this dual action product that actually lowers acetaldehyde levels through two separate mechanisms of action and has this ability to reduce this GABA rebound, which is why alcohol ruins your sleep and makes you feel so miserable the next day. So both good for your liver and you have the short-term benefit of you feel better.
So you guys got it approved using this International Food Supply Exemption route?
That's right. Yep.
That's really clever. Brooks, I now need to change my password on all my security because it was acetaldehyde. You've just said like 19 words I couldn't possibly spell. But that's really
the appendix, Bruce.
That's really incredible that you guys not only that you came across this in your studies, but then you had the tenacity to find these unique ways to pursue the idea and protect it. So I think Tracy's going to dig in a little bit more on Shark Tank. His favorite shark is Mark Cuban. I'm kind of a Mr. Wonderful guy, so we want your unfettered review, Trace.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your experience on Shark Tank, Brooks.
Shark Tank was a top 10 life event for me. There's things like getting married, becoming a Christian, having your first baby, winning a state championship, graduating college. You know what I mean? These are like formative memories in your life. Shark Tank is one of those formative memories for me, both the actual filming of it and that whole process, and then the airing of it. Both, were such unimaginable highs. Um, First of all, what you have to say about Shark Tank is every year there's 75,000 people that apply, and they only will air typically 25 episodes with 4 companies per episode. So, do the math. You get 100 companies that air on Shark Tank every season, 75,000 companies that apply. The last time I did the math, it's 25 times harder to get on Shark Tank than it is to get into Princeton.
And you did both.
Yeah, they probably helped each other, right?
Okay.
And I think they really wanted that college angle, and I think we were kind of the right place at the right time. Obviously, the story of like how we brought this product to market, and the science of it was so interesting. What's funny is we actually got kicked out of the process twice, and because what they're trying to do is whittle down from 75,000 down to 100. And the first time they kicked us out, they said, well, ABC owns Shark Tank. ABC is owned by Disney. Disney is a Christian company. We think your product may promote, the overuse of alcohol. And I said, okay, well, here's my 100-page junior paper on a Christian theology of alcohol. And in the preface, I explain how our product is actually a step towards responsible drinking, not irresponsible drinking. So I send that to the producers, and then they go, okay, you're right. You probably know more about this subject than we do. So they let us back into the process. Then Mark Cuban gave an ultimatum at one point. He told the producers, if you bring on another dietary supplement onto my show, I will ruin the episode. And the reason is Mark Cuban thinks that all dietary supplements are snake oil. He's not a friend of the dietary supplement industry at all. And I think what happened was the executive producer, Mark Cuban's an actor on a show. And so Mark Cuban, a billionaire actor, is telling the executive producer, hey, don't do this, or like he's threatening him. So I think, and I'm reading in between the lines here, I get to, so anyways, what happens is they unfortunately tell me, hey, Mark Cuban said no dietary supplements on the show. We have to kick you out of the process. So obviously being me, the guy that I am, that call came in at like 6 p.m. and I was like devastated. And I was like, you know what? Screw this. I'm going to give a last ditch effort. So I stayed up that entire night and I wrote a screenplay, like a mock screenplay. If Mark Cuban says this, I'll say this. If Mark Cuban says this, I'll say that. And I put it in the screenplay font and everything. I'd taken a film class at Princeton. And I sent this to our casting manager in the morning. I said, please forward this to the producers. And she sends back an email saying like, okay, I'm going to forward this, but this is weird. Nobody does this. I get a call back like 3 weeks later. And she says, I guess the executive producers liked what you sent them because they've instructed me to book your flights to LA. So congratulations. You're going to be filming for Shark Tank. Wow. I get to LA. And what they do is they film over like 5 days. And it's crazy. I mean, just every hour they're filming a new episode, and they'll just do this for 5 straight days. The day before filming starts, everyone gets to meet the executive producer. They make you come give your pitch in front of them, in front of the whole room, like all the other contestants. It's very nerve-wracking. I know they've since actually changed this process from COVID, but so I do that, and I'm standing right in front of the executive producer, and he said, Brooks, I've been casting for Shark Tank now for 9 seasons. You're the first person to write me a screenplay of my own show. He said, I think you and Mark Cuban are going to get in one hell of a fight. We're going to have the cameras rolling, and let's make some show business. And then they ushered me out of the room. And, what I love about Shark Tank is it is not scripted at all. Those sharks do not know who's walking down that hallway. So I walk down that hallway. They open the doors. And before I even start giving the pitch, I can see, because they set up your display before you walk out the door. And Mark Cuban is just staring daggers into me. And I think the reason is because he had told the producers, don't do this. The producers thinking, screw you, don't tell me how to do my show. I think there was like a whole lot of stuff that happened behind the scenes, and I was just the messenger or like the cannon fodder.
You were the
bullet sponge.
Yes. So I give the presentation. Other sharks are interested. Mark Cuban keeps trying to like debate the science. He's talking over everybody. It's literally chaos. If you haven't seen the episode, they're like everyone's talking over each other, fighting the whole time. And
Crazy.
Mark's trying to ruin the episode. And what happens is he ends up coming off like a jerk, and we end up coming off as the reasonable one. And no one really got to hear that much. So guess what? You have 4 or 5 million people watching an episode that are like, this sounds like a very interesting product. I didn't get to hear that much about it. So what do? They go to our website, and then they hit that website, and then they, then all of a sudden the purchases started hitting. So we did like an extra 75 grand the first day. So we did like 100 grand the first day, 100 grand the second day. And so many people go on Shark Tank and they'll see these huge spikes in sales. And then a week later, it's like over. And like they had this big spike, and then, it's like they never were on Shark Tank. And so we had this mission going into our Shark Tank airing that we were going to squeeze the life out of this opportunity, and we wouldn't let our revenue fall below half of whatever the first week's revenue was. And that was mayhem. I mean, we ran out of inventory, and we're doing pre-orders, and we only had $200,000 at the time, but we were run rating like $1 million a month for that first month. And like, you can just do the math. Product's not free.
No.
How are you going to fund the inventory, the cash flow cycles, all of it? So it's probably the most stressful 6 months of my life, and yet also the most like exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
American dream.
So two quick questions, Brooks. Did you get a deal, and
No.
did Mark Cuban ever reach out and be like, hey man, this actually good for you for sticking to it?
No and no. I think it's not in his nature to do something like that. So.
Well, he probably knew you lived in Houston, so you're a Rockets fan, which immediately puts you at odds with his Mavs heritage.
Sure.
I did my best. I said, hey, Mark, I know you don't like dietary supplements, but you have to recognize that there are some amazing dietary supplements. And I literally said this on the show. I know all of your athletes at the Dallas Mavericks use creatine monohydrate. And what I'm trying to tell you today is that Cheers is the creatine monohydrate of alcohol and liver supplements. And he's like, well, we'll listen. You know what I mean? But it was very dismissive, because that is the truth. There's a lot of snake oil within the dietary supplement industry,
yeah.
but there are some supplements that are extremely powerful.
So let's press into your trip now that you're rolling on Cheers. So talk to us a little bit about, getting started as an e-com brand, direct to consumer. Was it only on your website at first, or did you concurrently go to Amazon, or did you kind of sequence this thing? Tell us a little bit about the DTC route you started with.
It was pretty much both from the beginning. So, I was really sort of launching this business. I really started working on this business back in 2013, kind of was doing it under the radar until I graduated. Then we got some press, really started trying to scale up the Facebook, Instagram ads. And by the time you got to 2017, you saw omnichannel, not omnichannel what it is today, but, if you look back, like all the venture capital dollars were going to direct to consumer. And there was this idea of like, you have to know who your consumer is, and you have to own their data, and that's what's going to help you optimize. People were very skeptical of Amazon. By the time that 2017, 2018 was rolling around, you started to see a shift where people were becoming less skeptical, brand owners were becoming less skeptical of Amazon. And we were very bullish on Amazon for one very specific reason. Shipping speed matters for this product. This is a product that if you see it on a Thursday and you got a wedding on Friday, you're going to someone's wedding on Friday, that product getting to you by noon the next day is literally going to be the determining factor of whether you purchase or not.
Right.
Because you have such an amazing moment coming up to like try the product. So we always optimized in the very beginning. We had this vision that this product just needs to be everywhere, because it's a product that's only good if you have it when you need it. And so, shipping speed, mass retail distribution, like that was all in the roadmap from the very beginning. And then it was just a matter of how do we sequence this? What I don't think we expected is that over time, Amazon, even though our total e-commerce pie was growing, Amazon was taking 5% more of the pie every year. So much so that I believe 5, 10 years from now, it's like websites are going to be like a thing of the past, and it's just all going to be marketplaces and omni-channel for brands going forward. It really seems like direct to consumer is more of a dinosaur now, and omni-channel is really the way forward.
Interesting. I love that. So, Bruce, I mean, Brooks, talk to us a little bit about how you manage the role of, as you talked about, your website, Amazon, now you're in brick and mortar. How do you juggle all that, especially with pricing? Do you have specific SKUs for online versus brick and mortar? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yep. Um, I have to say that we got really lucky. In the early days, I mean, the goal was basically we're going to build an e-commerce business as big as we can. And then once we kind of feel like we reach a natural cap, then we'll start going into brick and mortar. And I think we had a lot of legs still, but there was a change called iOS 14.5 that hit in 2021 that Apple rolled out. And what that did is it took off app tracking from Facebook and Instagram. And when it got rid of the off-app tracking, and I mean, we don't know how the off-app tracking was working. All we know that it was working. And this is me speculating here, but if Bruce goes to a bar on Friday night, he has his phone on him, and his phone has Facebook on it. He's logged into Facebook. Facebook knew that Bruce walked into a bar on Friday night. So it's immediately starting to connect the dots using huge data sets that, oh my gosh, Bruce is a potential customer for Cheers, because it seems to be the case that people who walk into bars buy this product called Cheers. You know what I mean? Like, it's not logically figuring this out. It's literally just finding trends in the data.
Then.
Yeah, if then type things. And when that stuff so iOS 14.5 rolled around and it made it optional to be tracked. And 95%, so 19 out of 20 people opted out of tracking. And they thought like, oh yeah, screw Facebook and Instagram. I don't want them to track me. What they didn't realize was all they were doing was like, now Bruce, instead of seeing ads for Cheers, he's going to see like adult diaper ads, or so, you know what I mean?
Hey,
like
Brooks, easy.
Hey.
He's seeing ads that aren't fitting for him, right? And so I would say that it's actually a good thing that you have targeted ads, because you see ads that are actually interesting to you. So I think you're starting to see the pendulum swing back the other way. So we were doing really well. iOS 14.5 hits, and it like killed our new customer acquisition. We fought it for about 2 years. And then finally, we're like, you know what? If we need this business to start growing again, we need to get into brick and mortar retail. And that is when we decided, okay, well, how do you get into brick and mortar retail? We started calling people, and, a lot of them were just like, you just need to attend trade shows. So then it was like, okay, well, let's create a list of trade shows we should attend. And we just got really lucky that the next trade show that was like literally going to happen in 3 weeks from when we made this sort of decision was the National Association of Chain Drugstores Total Store Expo. And so anyways, we have this great first day, meet the market. You can tell retailers are chomping at the bit to get this brand into their store, but they were giving us sort of the advice of like, you got to figure out how to make this retail ready, because we typically sell in this like little clear jar, not a lot of text on the packaging, very just cool looking, because we've always used a website to sell things, or an Amazon product display page. Like, that's the packaging, and then we just ship them like a jar. But if you just saw that jar on a shelf without context, you'd never purchase. So a lot of them were like, you need to figure out how to get the packaging better, all of that. So we went to one of the parties that evening. I'm sure you guys know the Emerson party. And while we're at the Emerson party, I bump into a guy. He's a VP of sales. And he goes, okay, so what's the price going to be? And I said, oh, well, it's going to be, $11.99. He's like, okay, so you're going to price $11.99 to this place. Yep. Okay. And then what are you going to price it to like a Walmart or a Target at? And I was like, oh, it's going to be $11.99. He's like, oh, no. Yeah, no, kid, that's not how this works. So he's like, when we get back next week, we're going to schedule a meeting from 8 to 10 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And out of the goodness of my heart, I'm going to help you guys build a pricing matrix, because if you don't get this pricing matrix right, you will destroy your business before this thing even gets off the ground. And so really 1 week after NACDS TSE, we put together a pricing matrix that we figured out what products would be for online and try to keep them online only SKUs. So we could kind of do what we do that way. You don't have to worry about, selling to one retailer that then sells it and competes with you on Amazon or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And we figured out a pricing matrix from the drug channel all the way to Costco and the club channel. And that pricing matrix has remained unchanged since, what was that, late 2022. So we put together, this guy's an expert. That's what he does. And obviously we then made him an advisor because he's just been he's helped us see all the pitfalls far before we could actually, get a flat tire on the road.
That was smart of you, though, to listen and to seek out guidance. That was very smart on your part.
Lots of people wait until their car is impaled in a telephone pole before they ask for help.
Yes.
Well, if you're on the road to retail, you need to try to stay in the lanes.
Isn't that the truth? So Brooks, before we move on, how many total SKUs do you guys manage? I think that would be a good frame of reference for the folks out there, because now they're thinking, geez, this guy has some e-com SKUs. He's got this pricing matrix that he's been able to hold firm on now going into year 3. Are you guys managing, 8 SKUs, 19, 4?
So the way to think about it is we have 4 products. We have our Cheers Restore. It's our after alcohol aid, where you just take 3 capsules after your last alcoholic beverage or before going to bed to support your liver and help you feel better the next day. Then what happened is, while we were at these trade shows, people would come up to us and go, oh my gosh, I was at the Emerson party last night and I maybe had one drink too many. Do you have a product for me right now? And we're like, oh, well, sorry, you had to take this product last night. So then we realized there is a huge market for people who are hurting this moment and need a product right now. So then we created Cheers Relief, which is our next morning aid. And it basically is a natural form of aspirin called salicin. We can't say that, but basically it turns into the human body into the same thing that aspirin converts into. It has a cup of green tea's worth of L-theanine and caffeine, and then it's got a gram's worth of ginger. So it's basically like a Dramamine natural. It's like a natural form of Dramamine, a natural form of aspirin, and a natural form of Excedrin all in one product. And then we had a lot of people that were like, wow, you guys are experts in this alcohol stuff. You probably know a lot about liver health. So then we made Cheers Protect, which is our daily liver support. And then a lot of people believe that the reason you feel bad the day after drinking alcohol is dehydration. We would say it's a very small part of the reason you feel bad. But the leading brand for hydration uses sucrose. And sucrose is 50% glucose, 50% fructose. And fructose is gram for gram as hard on your liver as alcohol. So you want the glucose because the glucose speeds up the hydration process. That's the sodium co-transport system, or as what this one brand calls it, the cellular transport technology, which is just a fancy way of saying sodium glucose co-transport. So we took the fructose out. So it'd be a liver-friendly hydration product. So we have 4 products, and then we basically have SKU, like quantity pack variations thereof. So we have a 1-pack for the convenience channel. We have a 1-pack for clip strips, and we have a 1-pack for like check stands. And that is both with our Cheers Restore and our Cheers Relief. We also have a 3-pack of Cheers Restore and Cheers Relief. And then we have a 12-pack of Cheers Restore, Cheers Relief. We try to leave the 12 packs for e-com only. And then we have our daily liver support, which is a 30-day supply. And then we have our Cheers Hydrate, which is a 12-dose as well. And we allow the 12-dose Hydrate and the 12-dose Protect to live both on e-com and brick and mortar. So what is that in total? That's 8, right? 8, and then a club SKU. So we got 9 SKUs total.
That's really clever
Yes.
to hold the fort, and that was a very like Tracy said, a very fortuitous conversation to you to get into at that evening. So pushing
If I
on
could
here,
add one more thing, Bruce
please.
and Tracy, no matter the size of the opportunity, we don't we don't budge on it, because what we know is that to get brick and mortar to work, it all has to work together. And if you break something along the way, you actually mess up the entire brand, including for that retailer that tried to get like a sweetheart deal or change a pack
Yep.
size or something. So
Yep.
I would even argue, and this is what we tell retail merchants, we want to work with you so bad, but we cannot do that because that would actually impact our ability to drive sales for you and service you as a retailer. And we've actually had to walk away once or twice in company history because we couldn't come to an agreement. Now, thankfully, the Cheers brand's doing really well. Last year we did 15 million. This year we'll do, hopefully close to 25 million. We had 80 million impressions on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok just in the month of March. So we're on pace to do 1 billion impressions in 2025. Thankfully, retailers are coming that we had to say, no to, are coming back and saying, okay, we understand why you guys had to walk away, and now we're figuring out kind of the way to abide by the pricing matrix and work together and all of that. But it's so critically important. You want that revenue this year, but it's so much more important to keep this all right and make it work next year.
Well, you're exactly right to stand firm on that. We were talking to an emerging brand either yesterday or late last week, and talking to that person. And one of the things we said to them, because they're not as far along in their growth plan, but they're talking about all these different retailers. And I said, hey, the minute the word no leaves your vocabulary, bad things will start happening. Because it was the same thing. A SKU they wanted for this class of trade, another account wanted it, and it potentially could have been a pretty juicy order. But I don't know what they did. But we said, they're like, what do you think we should do? Don't do it.
Right.
Don't do that. All right, Brooks. So, you just touched on it with all the impressions. Talk to us a little bit about the marketing vehicles you use. For those that do follow you, you're active on LinkedIn. You've done some impactful, and some of them are hilarious short videos. But what tools are you using to get the word out on Cheers?
I am a big believer in don't move on to the next thing until you've mastered the last thing and laid the tracks for it. And we use something here at Cheers called EOS. It stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. And long story short, it's a book called Traction. Is written by a guy named Gino Wickman. And what you do is you put a 5-year plan together, and then you break your 5-year plan into a 2-year picture, and then you break that into a 1-year thing, and then you break it down into quarters. And they have these things called rocks, and rocks just stand for really big projects. And what you realize is that, and what they say is, each key employee in each department and the company as a whole is not allowed to have more than 3 to 7 rocks per quarter, but less is more. And what you realize is, hey, we can only accomplish 3 things this quarter or 3 things this year. And you start to allow this idea of phasing into your vocabulary. So just because we're saying no to this channel or this new marketing thing today does not mean we're saying no to it next quarter. Like, you could be interested in it. We're just saying this quarter we need to focus on this. So our belief was, we're really good at social media marketing, primarily Facebook and Instagram advertising, and we're good at selling through our website and Amazon. So we're going to grow that as big as we can until we hit a natural ceiling. Then we're going to lay the tracks to make sure we can keep that going and keep it growing. And then we're going to pursue the next thing. So we hit that cap with iOS 14.5, and we finally made this strategic decision to do brick and mortar in late 2022. And, then we were still only advertising on Facebook and Instagram. We spent 4 million Facebook, Instagram in 2024. And, you're starting to see where it kind of like, is like you're starting to butt up against the ceiling. Like, you're not at the ceiling yet, but it's getting harder. Like, you're feeling the friction. So we go, okay, well, what's the next big channel that makes the most sense? So you look at all your options. Is it podcast ads? Is it linear TV? Is it billboards? Like, what is it? And you go, well, it's probably TikTok. It's the most closely related to Facebook and Instagram. It's vertical video. We're already shooting vertical videos. There's a lot we're going to have to learn. The style's different, all of this. Let's start going into TikTok. And then you start looking at it and going, okay, like once you get TikTok spun up, then you could just film your ads horizontally, and then you can do YouTube. And then if you got YouTube figured out, then you could go into linear TV or something, right? So that's kind of the marketing plan. What we've embarked on really in the last like 2 quarters. I mean, we started on it 3 quarters ago. It took a lot of internal momentum. A lot of people were very skeptical of TikTok internally. But we just made the strategic decision to start chasing TikTok. It was really slow at first. We started seeing some real signs of life in Q4. Accidentally, through like a mistake, we accidentally spent like 20 grand on TikTok one day in January. And next thing you know, sales blew up on Amazon and in our brick and mortar retails. And we're like, whoa, that was interesting. So sometimes, like all good science experiments, they usually start with a mistake. And then that sort of really created the internal momentum that we needed to figure out how to make TikTok work as a channel. And so now, we're posting 3 to 10 videos per day on TikTok. And just in this last week, we had 4 videos in 6 days. One video got like 1.1 million views. Another video got 8.3 million views. Another video got 4.3 million views. And then just randomly last night, another video got like 1.1 million views. And so we're really figuring out like, wow, because we're creating so much content so quickly, it's allowing us to identify like what is actually resonating with consumers. And what we figured it out is it's basically Bill Nye the Science Guy. I don't know if you guys ever watched Bill Nye the Science Guy, but my generation was raised on Bill Nye the Science Guy. If anytime there was a substitute teacher, they'd wheel in the TV and the VCR, pop in a Bill Nye the Science Guy, and we knew we were in for the best 45 minutes of our life. And so we're capturing that vibe of making science cool and fun and explaining alcohol, how it works, how it affects your brain, how it affects your liver, how you can actually rehydrate with beer, how fructose, like why fructose is so bad for your liver, how our products work. I mean, there's so many interesting concepts. Drink this versus that from a health perspective, how alcohol ruins your sleep. We're just hitting all of this very cool science in the most entertaining way possible. So we did one video.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So we did one video where, everyone thinks alcohol is toxic, and alcohol is like a little bit toxic, but it's the acetaldehyde that's toxic. So I took a bottle of wine and I poured it over myself and I said, alcohol is not actually toxic. And then I go on to explain how it's a little bit toxic, but what's really toxic is the acetaldehyde. And that video got about 3 or 4 million views on TikTok. And then when we uploaded it to Facebook and Instagram, it just killed it. And so what's really fun for us now is that we're making videos for TikTok, and then anything that wins on TikTok, we take it over to Meta. And, I wouldn't be surprised, knock on wood, if we can't get to a place where we're productively spending $1 million a month on social media. And, I'm heck bent on making sure we get 1 billion impressions this year, because it's amazing. I mean, I wear these colorful shirts, and I wear the colorful shirts in the ads, and I'll get into an airport and people will walk up to me and go, oh my gosh, are you the Cheers guy? And they'll want to take a selfie. And like, like how many impressions 1 billion impressions are? Like everyone knows you, That's cool.
So Brooks, that I love what you said was don't move on to the next thing until you've mastered the current thing. So focus is so key, because whether it's time, cash, I'm also a huge believer. I used to call it the load board. People can only handle so much. So if you give them 3, 4 things to really work on, they feel like they can make progress. You give them 14 things and they'll surrender, even though at the end of the year, they might have got 14 done, but you fed it to them in small bites. So
Yes.
we're rolling into rapid fire here as we come toward the end. So quickly, what piece of advice would you give an emerging brand as they're starting out on their life cycle to start their business, aside from discover an Asian ingredient that no one's ever heard of, or really get into it with Mark Cuban? What's your piece of advice?
Yeah. But besides, so there's luck, right? You can get lucky. But what I've noticed is that there's a lot of people that they'll have something amazing. You know, we had this opportunity pop up, and to my credit, within a month, I was like, this is going to be the next 2 decades of my life. You know what I mean? Like just, and I within a month of that study coming out, I was like, this is it. This is what I'm doing. And I think there's a lot of people that they don't seize opportunities when they come. So luck was part of it, but then also the awareness to actually seize an opportunity and go all in early, fast, hard. I would say, you know, this is the road to retail. The most important thing in our retail success, and just so you know, Cheers is now in over 32,000, well, within the next 3 months, we'll be in 32,000 doors. And we did that in essentially 3 years. So from 0 to 32,000 doors in 3 years. The most important thing was having a profitable e-commerce business that was already decently successful before we got on retail shelves. And the reason is what we were doing is taking the profits out of the e-com business and using it to fund the brick and mortar business. The other thing that was so important is it allowed us to say no to opportunities that didn't make sense. So if you're trying to make money from brick and mortar at the beginning, you don't really have the ability to say no. And if you don't have the ability to say no, you're going to do a lot of things that are going to handicap the business far later. And not only handicap the business, but handicap that retailer that asked you to do something special. You're actually handicapping the success at that retailer too. Because, you know, I've written on this thing called the ACV threshold gap on LinkedIn. And the thing got viewed like 30,000 times. And I literally just drew it on my iPad. You know, it's like real ugly and everything. It was funny. Our creative director like redesigned a really perfect one, and I posted that, and like no one looked at it. So sometimes I think ugly is better. You know what I mean? It looks like your scratch notes.
That, Bruce. Ugly is better.
Yep.
And what I say is that as your ACV goes up, right? So as your retail penetration goes up, the more there's more opportunity for people to purchase your product. What that is ACV is like is your surface area. Okay. And then marketing is your stickiness. And marketing is expensive. And so if you don't have a lot of surface area, then what's going to happen is you're going to turn the marketing on, and it's just going to be like sand that goes through your fingertips. Right. And so what you want is you want to be scaling your marketing while you're simultaneously scaling your ACV. And so it's funny. It's like when we open up, you know, we have one retailer, and then, you know, their biggest competitor launches big with us. You know, at their first temptation, I think, is to think, oh no, this is going to hurt our sales. And then I tell that merchant, no, you just wait what happened. Us launching into those 5,000 doors just allowed us to spend $5,000 more per day on marketing. And when we spend $5,000 more per day on marketing, guess what happens?
Everyone wins.
That original retailer sales goes up. So it's like, I tell them, you should root for us to get into your competitors, because what's happening is it's going to allow us to spend more, and that's going to drive more traffic into your stores and ultimately make you richer.
Yep. Great. Tracy?
Yeah. So, Brooks, tell us a little bit about who's had the most influence on your career.
Sean Riley from Dude Wipes.
Okay. Wow.
So he's probably the best follow on LinkedIn. And what I think Sean Riley has gotten at, and if you don't know Dude Wipes, it's wet flushable wipes. And he has made it his mission to destroy toilet paper. He just had a big article in the Wall Street Journal. And, you know, when you're an entrepreneur, you get a Wall Street Journal article. It's like a really big deal. And the cover image is like him in a dark room with a roll of toilet paper, lighting it on fire, you know? And so what he's done though is what he taught me is marketing and building a brand is extremely fun, but only if you're authentic to yourself and you're building the brand that you want to build. And so it's so counterintuitive. You go do all these customer insights studies and all this stuff. And, Henry Ford, I think, said it best. If I asked customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. And, so there's this spectrum of, do you build the business and the brand that you want to build, or do you build what customers want? And I think if you don't build the brand that you want to build, you will run out of creative energy. You'll run out of passion. And that is going to kill you far before this whole, do customers want it thing. I think Sean Riley's point is that if you're genuine and you love what you're doing and you're passionate about a category and you're passionate about your brand, that comes through to the customers, and you're going to find those passionate customers that want to support you on that journey. And me being a Baptist and not drinking that much alcohol and all that, what we identified is that people always thought hangover cures could never be a bona fide consumer healthcare category because they thought it was hangover pills for binge drinking college kids. And less than 96% of Cheers' revenue, over 96% of Cheers' revenue comes from people over the age of 25. So we're talking about 1% of our customers maybe are college kids, 3 or 4% are young professionals, and then the above are like moms and dads and people who drink responsibly but still want to support their liver and feel better the day after drinking alcohol. And everyone always thought hangovers only came from binge drinking. And the truth is you can drink a responsible amount of alcohol consumption and feel less than 100% the next day. So I had that vision. I put it out into the universe, and guess what? There was a whole lot of customers out there that agreed with that vision.
Well, I've been tracking the Dude Wipes brand because at first when it came out, I was like, "What in the world?" And but it's been cool to watch that thing grow. All right, Brooks, a little fun question here. We're rounding third, about to enter our slide into home plate. So the fun question: who is your favorite brand, band, or football team, and why do you support them? Can't say your own brand, and I will not allow Dude Wipes. You already said that.
Okay, so this one's going to be controversial, so I can't have anyone that hates me for this. Well, so I had two things that came to mind. At first, I was going to say the Houston Astros, but they had the whole cheating scandal, and that's why it's controversial. But what I loved about the Houston Astros is they made baseball fun. And it was a young team. They would have a blast. They were always joking around. I think the cheating scandal was a real unfortunate thing for the city of Houston and that team. And they came back from it. They definitely redeemed themselves within Houston's eyes. I don't think they've redeemed themselves in the world, in the baseball world's eyes.
Right.
So let me back up. I actually want to say Southwest Airlines when it was under Herb Kelleher. And the reason is he made that brand fun. I mean, the guy was a little bit of a lunatic. The stories about Herb was that he would get so distracted. He'd chain smoke cigarettes. He would light a cigarette and he would get so animated and talking to you and so excited about whatever they're doing that he would light a second cigarette in his other hand. And then next thing you know, he goes to grab something and he realizes he has a cigarette in both hands. And it's the guy was kind of a nut, but he built such an amazing culture, such an amazing business. And his insight is fascinating. So what is Amazon's insight? Customer first, right? Southwest, in their mission statement, it says, our employee comes first. We come first. And because he believed, happy team, happy employees, you believe in your mission, you love what you're doing, that ends up benefiting the customer more than a brand that puts the customer first but makes themselves miserable, and then the customer can feel that and it just leads to a bad environment, right? And I still think, I think the culture's changed a little bit, but you still feel that among all the airlines, that when you get on a Southwest flight, the flight attendants are joking. Yeah. It's kind of a party vibe, and they're building the brand that they want to build. And I'll tell you, my favorite line that Herb said is, some lady would write to him every single week and say, I hate that you have open boarding and all this, and write him a letter, like writing the CEO a letter. He writes this customer back and he says, Dear Martha, we will miss you. Love Herb. But it's this idea of build what you want to build, and the customers will follow.
So there's an interesting bit out there. I'm sure it's out on YouTube somewhere, Brooks, which I bet you'd like. Back in the day when Herb was still running Southwest, I want to say it was a disagreement over like the SWA.com URL. So
the
he
arm
gets
wrestling.
yeah, he gets involved, and the guy who owns it is like a super fit bodybuilder, and Herb challenges him to arm wrestling, and they show the guy training push-ups, lifting weights. Herb's drinking bourbon, smoking, and he comes in with like a ninja headband on. It was hilarious. All right,
and that's creating that's just creating value. They were in the story is they were in a huge lawsuit. Both of those companies were spending millions of dollars fighting each other over the Southwest name. They made like Southwest airline parts, and then they were Southwest Airlines. Herb called the guy up and he said, hey, everyone knows we have this, it's a highly public litigation. Let's turn this into a PR stunt and let's both win. So they negotiated a settlement basically, and then turned it into a PR stunt. Whoever wins the arm wrestling competition would win the debate. So he let the guy, the guy was going to win anyways, but he let the guy win the arm wrestling thing, and then the guy graciously agreed to sign a coexistence agreement, and both companies won. And that's what I love about business, is that there's no right way to do it, and this isn't a zero-sum game. There is a way for everyone to win here, and that is what I love so much about business. I think there is a good element to capitalism that people don't see, and it's a lot of fun.
Well, that's great. So Brooks, if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way if they want to learn, reach out to you and learn more about Cheers? What's the best way to reach you?
So it's hard to get to me. I think probably the best way is comments on LinkedIn. That's probably the thing I check most often.
Okay.
So Facebook, Instagram ads, TikTok, that's from a customer perspective. We put a lot there. If you're in the industry, and I define industry here as like CPG, consumer healthcare, brick and mortar, LinkedIn, I put literally almost all of our secrets on LinkedIn. We have competition that copies us, so you might as well just put it out there anyway, so that the industry knows that when they copy us, they did copy us, right? And what's been fascinating is everyone, the retailers love seeing it. They like to see behind the scenes. All the other suppliers, they're learning from us. And it's just been a lot of real community engagement, which has been awesome.
Well, that's fantastic. So, Brooks, thanks again for your time. All right, Tracy, the big finish.
Absolutely. Great episode, Brooks. Just fantastic insight. Love to hear your story. So thanks again for being our guest, and please continue to follow us on our Instagram and our iTunes, our Apple, Spotify, our new website, road2retail.com, and then also obviously LinkedIn, and look for this great episode coming to you soon. So thanks for joining.
Good luck out there, folks.
And thanks, Bruce. Good to see you.